usual suspect. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. It's a beautiful one around here. Welcome back from all that Premier League action on Tuesday night. Three games we did witness. Nottingham Forest in action against United, West Ham against Wolves, and of course Arsenal against Fulham there as they sought to reduce their deficit between them and Liverpool, which they managed to accomplish, as we will see subsequently. So the results: Arsenal did beat Fulham 2-1. West Ham were losers against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Strand Larson scoring the only goal in that particular game as Wolves won all 3 points. While Manchester United were on the losing end against Nottingham Forest, who have been a very stubborn side facing the Big Six this season. But that notwithstanding, it's been that kind of season, hot and cold, like Kasuku described them sometime back when we had an interview with him. He described as his Manchester United team as hot and cold over the course of this season. But as far as Arsenal go, yesterday the game was very beautiful, very entertaining. They did dominate the affairs very much as we had expected. The starting 11 didn't have any surprises, but what we had predicted. And then Fulham on the other side, a couple of changes, leaving Alexander Iwobi on the bench. Andreas Pereira did start on the bench. Of course, Rodrigo Muniz, who scored the consolation, of course, also starting on the bench. But for the big concerns for Arsenal was the going off of Gabriel Magalhaes around the 16th minute with what appeared to be a hamstring injury. And we already know that Arsenal have suffered at least two hamstring injuries in the course of this season that kept out Bukayo Saka, who was making his dream return after out of action, making his dream return after 3 months. We do know that according to the Arsenal medics and according to the club website, Kai Havertz was ruled out for the remainder of the season with a similar issue. He did suffer that hamstring injury during the Dubai camp. So in what was a mid-season, a mid-season break. And then, so that is of course, and Mikel Arteta did say they suspect it's a hamstring. They do not know how bad it is, but he said he felt something in his hamstring and he had to be taken off. Of course, in the moment there was Arsenal wanted to claim a lack of sportsmanship because the player went down, referee didn't do anything, and then he got himself up. Arsenal players were appealing to Fulham players because Fulham were in possession of the ball to play it out so that Gabriel Magalhaes gets treatment. But they refused, and rightly so, because when Arsenal were in possession, they took notice of the incident, Declan Rice being one of those, and they proceeded with their attack. So when they conceded possession, then they felt that tables should turn. And really, it doesn't work that way, clearly. So it wasn't to their advantage. And like Arsenal continued to press on. They created the moments that would have resulted in goals, but again, you still felt a lack of speed, especially in the first half. There was a lack of speed, there was a slowness to their interplay, their passing, and going oftentimes wide because the way Fulham set themselves up, they set up a very low block. They had literally a back five, and then you had followed by what would be a midfield 3 block, and then the front 2. Now, every time they were overpressed, they would create a cohort of 3 players within the opposition, within the defense of whichever Arsenal players had the ball in that moment. And that's why you saw Ethan Nwani look very ineffective down on that left or on that right flank. And then Gabriel Martinelli, I think, was the spark on the night because he, on a couple of occasions, he was able to get beyond or behind the Fulham defense, and it was sort of reinvigorating to watch. Of course, the credit also goes to Bernard Leno, who did his best to keep Fulham in the game, and it wasn't until that moment with Mikel Moreno's deflected ball that Arsenal managed to find the back of the net for that for them to get into the lead. A one that they did deserve, I thought, at the moment in which the goal came, but you felt that slowness. If you do recall Arsenal's 1-0 loss against West Ham, again, it was sort of in similar fashion for those minutes in the first half, that they passed the ball sideways back to midfield, and they sort of end up lacking, look or appear to be lacking a cutting edge in front of box. They weren't directing the midfield. They lacked that sharp pass. They lacked that long ball. So oftentimes you felt like that was lacking until of course the goal did come. And when the goal came, of course, it required Fulham to commit more to try and get the equalizer, but they sort of kept their shape to keep the discipline. Hello, Siren. Hello, Siren. Thank you for tuning into the broadcast. So, like I was saying there, that they really tried. Fulham tried to keep their shape, but that notwithstanding, because it helped them soak the pressure. Like I said, the back five, then the three, and then Raul Jimenez trying to lead the press, and then interswitching with Adama Traore, and on a couple of occasions they did win back possession, although they were unable to capitalize on those key moments, when they won back possession. And in fact, it was in one of those moments, them winning back, I think, possession, that they go on to a speedy run that causes Gabriel Magalhaes to pull what appeared to be his hamstring, that eventually causes him to go off in that moment. So you could clearly see, like it was indicated. So basically, that was the first half in a nutshell. David Raya, on the other hand, on the other side, did have really much to do as far as keeping Arsenal in the game was concerned. His work was really basic on the day. And sorry about flying. I don't know what's disturbing. Anyways, so in the second half, again, like I said, if that Nwaneri was not impactful. Thomas Partey in that midfield was pulling strings. I thought he was doing his work really well. Declan Rice again was running his socks off. Sasa Lukic on the other side was quite combative, going in for the hard tackles, and of course that pretty much we expected. Emil Smith-Rowe was not very effective because Fulham were oftentimes out of possession, so they didn't have much of the ball to try and create. So Emil Smith-Rowe found himself, ineffective on his return to the Emirates Stadium. And then you had, of course, on the other side, Martin Odegaard. I did feel like, because in the first half, I think I did observe about 2 occasions when he conceded possession, and in quite clumsy style. So I felt like he didn't have a good day in office overall, at least in my opinion. That's for Martin Odegaard. Oftentimes I felt he was slow. Of course, the only good moment or good moments that I do remember of him is that through ball that he plays to Urian Timber in that quick interplay. I think it was after a set piece that they played a little backwards, and then they get into that quick interplay and plays a very beautiful through pass for Urian Timber, who then goes on to take a shot that Bandledo was able to save. So that's the moment, or the few highlights that I remember of the captain. Otherwise, everything he did on the day was quite basic. Then there is a moment, I think, still in the second half, I think the ball is given to Martinelli, I think on the sidelines. Now, instead of him making a direct run into the box, he again runs as if he's going around the, that 18 yards box up. And I'm like, why are you running upwards the other side when there's space here that you can run into in the box and give Martinelli an option, instead of him having to wait for Miles Lewis Kelly to arrive on this side to create an option for him? I thought that was, I don't know, it was a bad run, in my opinion. I didn't make sense of it because Arsenal already had very few players in the offense. Now, it's, of course, I think it was Declan Rice and Mikel Moreno trying to run into the box. Now, Miles Lewis Kelly is still a little bit far off, but he's running his way to create that, that option on that left flank. And Martin Odegaard, instead of making that thing run into the box, Martin Odegaard decides to, circle the other way around. And I'm like, why are you going? If it had been an Aaron Ramsey in that kind of position, for those of you that do remember, I think around the 2012, 2013 Premier League season, or thereabout, or 13, 14, thereabout, when Arsenal were wearing that yellow kit, when he scored so many goals, he was more direct. In that moment, he would be running to the box to, try and get a beg for that ball so that he can go and score. And I thought Martin Odegaard did not do that. Anyways, fast forward, of course, Bukayo Saka is brought on to replace Ethan Nwaneri. A dream return that was around the 65th hour mark. Like yesterday, we had said in our preview of this particular fixture that we did not expect him to start, but we had expected that he would get the last 25, 20, 15 minutes of the game to play and, be on the grass and run. And it was the dream return. The Emirates Stadium did roar in support of him. And it was a magical scene, that reception that he was able to get. Please forgive me about the motorbike noise that may be protruding through this broadcast. Apologies, somebody is, doing something and there's not much we can control about that. So he comes on and 7 minutes in, he is on the score sheet. Quite the dream return. That's why we're calling it the dream return, because clearly in that moment, I think Declan Rice wins the ball back around the midfield area point. He plays in Mikel Moreno. Mikel Moreno does a very beautiful run, I thought. Plays in, Declan Rice plays in, I think, Gabriel Martinelli, who then makes that good run and plays in Mikel Moreno, who had down on the flank. Mikel Moreno, while sliding down, tries to cross that ball. And then, for some reason, intuitively, Gabriel Martinelli takes a flick on that ball to drive it further towards the path of Saka, who scores in barely in almost an empty net, and it's 2-0 at the time. So Arsenal dominated the affairs. They controlled things in that midfield, and they did everything right. Except, of course, there were moments they gave themselves away, because what Fulham did was sit back and then wait to catch Arsenal on the break, and they got that on a couple of occasions. But their finishing touch wasn't as good. There's a moment where Adama Traore gets the better of Yakub Kiviu, and I thought it was naive of Yakub Kiviu to try and outcompete muscle to muscle with Adama Traore, because the best option he had to do was, once he had the ball in strike, play the pass, I think, to Urian Timber on the other upper side, or kick that ball outside, because pound for pound, Adama Traore is stronger, he's even much faster. So he gets the better of Yakub Kiviu in that moment, but then his final ball that he does deliver in the box is not good. And then there's another chance that was delivered to Rodrigo Muniz after he came on, and he headed that ball just a whisker off the mark. And at that point, had Fulham scored, it was going to be a very long night for Arsenal. But he missed that header with the net literally begging for him to score. But he tried to act smart and head the ball to the far post, and he doesn't hit that. So he fails on that. That was just minutes after his cameo. And then, of course, he gets another chance and he pulls one back. Of course, his attempt was deflected beyond the reach of David Wire, and it's 2-1. And you had a bit of a nervy ending there to the game, but Arsenal managed to hold it out for a 2-1 victory there, as they conceded, I think, that 25th goal of the season so far. They have the best defense. I think Liverpool have conceded around 27 goals thereabout. So clearly that was the result, but the highlight of the day was the return of Bukayo Saka and him scoring. My man of the match, if you had to ask, was Gabriel Martinelli. He did provide the assist for that goal. He thought he had got himself on the score sheet, but his run had been made a little too early, so he was in an offside position when he buried that opportunity. Then moving forward from that fixture, Manchester United did lose to Nottingham Forest by a goal to nil, falling to the promises of their former player in Anthony Elanga, who made a very, very brilliant run, a very decent run for him to go and score. I mean, United, this season, Manchester United have failed to win back-to-back Premier League games. Remember yesterday when we were discussing the preamble, we were talking about the last Premier League outing in which they beat up against Leicester City by 3 goals to nil. And you had hoped that would be inspiration enough, but it didn't seem to be the case because right on the day, it did come a little early for them against a very important Nottingham Forest side. But it was that kind of game. It was that kind of game where Nottingham Forest, they're very good defensively. They're very strong, and you get the sense that Nottingham Forest wanted it more. You get the sense that because they are pursuing that UEFA Champions League position, they wanted it. They just wanted it more overall. Of course, United had their chances, and Nottingham Forest had to make some goal line clearances in the dying embers of the game. I think Harry Maguire involved in the mix of that action and that kind of thing. But overall, it is Nottingham Forest that went home with 3 points. Anthony Elanga scoring the only goal of the game as they solidify their stay in third place, because it is Liverpool leading the pile, 70 points and 9 points ahead of a second place Arsenal, who come at around 61 points. And then, of course, Nottingham Forest, who are 4 points behind Arsenal at 57 points. And then I think Chelsea do follow in that mix. But overall, United have failed to win back-to-back Premier League games this season. They win, they lose, they draw, they win, they draw, they lose, in that kind of pattern. And of course, Ruben Amorim was speaking about the situation and said it does come with a lot of pressure, playing for United. I think he was talking in respect to whether United needs players that are out there known and are doing better. And he was saying those players have been here at Manchester United before. They've played here. They know the pressure. Playing for United comes with a lot of pressure. And, anyway, it was just not good enough. It was never good enough. And then the other fixture, of course, Wolverhampton Wanderers, beating up against West Ham by goal to nil. Strand Larson on target there for Wolverhampton Wanderers as they worked up those 3 points. So beautiful stuff that you'd want to see for Victor Pereira there. For Victor Pereira, the Wolverhampton Wanderers coach, because his role is to save them from relegation, and I think he's on the verge of achieving that, because it doesn't look likely that the fortunes of Leicester City, Ipswich Town, and Southampton are going to change anyway. So it doesn't really appear that way. But United, of course, with that result, they keep their position in the bottom half of the table, which is not pretty for any United fan out there. So it is that I wanted us to look at the fixtures that we do have today. I do not know the fixture list, but yes, we do have Liverpool up against Everton. That's at 10 p.m. East African time. That's the Merseyside derby that will be at Anfield. And then, of course, so in that particular fixture, my expectation is that it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough game for either side, of course. But because Arsenal won yesterday and reduced that point deficit from 12 to 9, I get the feeling that Liverpool will play under a little bit more pressure as opposed to if they had played earlier, But that game coming at 10 p.m. East African time. In the early kickoffs that will come at 9:45 p.m., we'll have Ipswich Town up against Bournemouth. That's at the Vitality Stadium, while Brighton and Hove Albion at the Amex Stadium will entertain Aston Villa. I do think this is a very brilliant game to look forward to. Brighton being knocked out of the FA Cup over the weekend at the hands of Nottingham Forest for on penalties. Manchester City will be beating up against Leicester City, but by whichever score that we should expect. Newcastle will be up against Brentford, while Southampton will be at home against Crystal Palace. Now, predictions. Ipswich, Bournemouth. I'm going for a Bournemouth win, 2-1. Brighton, Aston Villa. Both teams to score. Maybe a 1-1 draw. I don't know. But that's my prediction. Man City, Leicester City could be what? 3-0, 4-0, 4-1 Man City. But Leicester don't know how to score. I don't remember the last time they scored a Premier League goal. Possibly, it could be a 4-0 for Man City. That's my prediction. I'm hoping. Of course, Man City will be without their forward, involved Erling Haaland, who, according to reports, will need to see a specialist for that ankle injury that he did suffer over the weekend in their 2-1 victory over Bournemouth as they advanced to the semi-finals of the FA Cup. So, but even without him, you do get the feeling that the likes of Omar Mamouche will step up and get the job done. So I'm going for a 4-0 victory there. Newcastle, Brentford, bit of a difficult one. As good as Newcastle are, they do concede so many goals. That's the feeling you get. So, on the back of that good feeling factor of winning the Carabao Cup, they did have their trophy parade down in Newcastle, attended by a throng of people and that kind of thing. Brentford well rested, Brian Mbuemo on form, Joan Bisa on form, Norgard. I mean, very decent team. I'm going for a 2-2 draw for this one. And then Southampton versus Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace to edge this one. 2-0 Crystal Palace to win that one. And then Liverpool, Everton. Liverpool, Everton, I'm going for a draw. Maybe 1-1. We all remember the first leg between the two sides ended in a 2-2 draw. That was in the final Merseyside derby at Goodson Park. We all remember it was a chaotic ending after, I think, James Tarkowski scored that equalizer. And then the final whistle came with a brandishment of red cards to manager Anna Slot that earned him, I think, a 2-match touchline ban. And then you had Curtis Jones be given a red card. You had Abdullah Diakore be given a red card. So it's a highly contested fixture. Now, with David Moyes in the dugout for Everton, where you do think, of course, they do draw so many games. Excuse me. They do draw so many games, but you hope, you really hope, you do hope that that they will give Liverpool that desired test. Liverpool themselves are not in a very good moment, at least at this pace in the season, especially coming out of a difficult spell or period in which they got knocked out of course, the FA Cup, knocked out of the UEFA Champions League, and of course went on to lose the Carabao Cup final and that kind of thing. So, excuse me. So you do expect, could that be a factor? Maybe yes, maybe not. James Tarkowski, that defense, Nyakalenko in that left back role, that midfield of Idris Kanagwe, and then of course I do not know if Dominic Calvert-Lewin is available to play because he's often always sick. But Beto leading the line, Abdoulaye Diakore in that mix, James McNeil if he's available to play, and that kind of thing. You get the feeling that Everton, first of all, will concede a possession to Liverpool. Liverpool will have more of the ball. I think Everton will be very combative. They'll play a low block. They will try to capitalize on counterattacks, on set pieces, especially, we all know they are very tall. They have very tall, players. So when it comes to corner kicks and, set piece plays, that's when they tend to leverage on that. Liverpool on the other side, you do expect that Mohamed Salah, with his 27 goals in the Premier League this season as the leading top scorer, followed by Bud Erling Haaland and Alexander Isak at 21 and 19 goals respectively. The fourth being Chris Wood of Nottingham Forest with 18 goals, surprisingly so. But my point is that Mo Salah has to step up. Diego Jota is even available to play, but Luis Diaz, who has been subject to transfer speculation ahead of the summer, Darwin Nunes, Cody Gakpo, all those players, Alexis McAllister in midfield, Brian Gravenberch, and Dominic Szoboszlai to step up and get Liverpool all 3 points, because this is the time when they need to win the most, because all they are left to play for or to play with is the Premier League. And with that very healthy point lead on the Premier League table, trust me, I do not think they want to squander that for any reason whatsoever. But if there is any game that could force them into squandering that, okay, if there's any game that could cost them points, at least as you know, we head into this final games of the season, then you do suspect that Everton are really, really capable of causing an upset. But I do not think it will be a complete upset. My gut feeling, perhaps even wishfully or wishful thinking, is that it will be a draw. Maybe a 1-all draw, maybe a 2-all draw. That's my prediction there for that particular game. Do let me know what your predictions are for all those particular games down in the comment section. Those who managed to join us on the live broadcast, I do not take you for granted. I do appreciate you really, really so much. Those that do watch our live broadcasts much later after, you know, when we're done, then I also do appreciate the time that you take. I do appreciate your efforts. Do not forget to like, comment, and share so that we can continue to engage. Otherwise, allow me wish you a wonderful rest of the day. It's coming to 10 a.m. So stay blessed and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.